The grand dining hall gleamed like a palace of mirrors, chandeliers scattering light across polished marble floors. Guests murmured softly, the sound of silk and crystal mingling in a rhythm older than memory. At the center, Kate lifted her glass, unaware of the danger poised in the air like a predator circling unseen. The liquid caught the light, a sun suspended in crystal, reflecting every gilded curve, every polished surface, every pair of watchful eyes. A guard stood near, rigid, a sentinel shaped by decades of discipline. His gaze swept the room, noticing details invisible to the casual observer. A tremor in a hand, a shadow moving against protocol, the faintest glimmer that whispered a threat. Time stretched thin. Every breath felt amplified, every glance magnified. Then it happened. The glass shattered. Crystal shards leapt across the table, a violent punctuation to the silence. Gasps filled the hall. Whispers clawed at the edges of nerves. Kate froze, heart hammering. The guard hand hovered, unshaken, unafraid. The embodiment of duty and instinct fused in a single instantaneous act. In that fraction of a second, trust and vigilance collided. The palace, vast and glittering, held its breath, and somewhere beneath the gilded perfection, the first hint of danger had already begun to stir. The courtyard was silent, yet the echo of command lingered in the air, stretching into the vast corridors beyond. Morning light crept across the stone battlements, brushing the fluttering royal banners. Inside, the dining hall shimmered, chandeliers hanging like frozen constellations, scattering fractured light across polished marble. Every surface reflected 1,000 gleaming points, a cathedral of gold, crystal, and tradition. At the center of the splendor, Kate lifted a crystal glass to her lips, unaware that the act itself might summon danger. The camera drifts through the hall. Whispers ripple among the guests, restrained but uneasy. Servants hover at the periphery, silent, eyes sharp. The faint hum of anticipation vibrates beneath the air. Kate tilts the glass. The liquid catches the chandelier's light. She does not see the guard, perfectly still, eyes scanning, hand poised near the table. A sentinel trained to act before catastrophe strikes. Then, in a heartbeat, the world shatters. The guard's hand strikes the crystal. Shards explode outward, clattering against marble, a sound brittle and high-pitched, slicing through the hall's serene veneer. Kate jerks back instinctively, the liquid trembling and spilling. Gasps pierce the tense silence. Whispers rise like wind through chimes. Was it poison? What just happened? The guard remains composed, every sinew taut with discipline. Eyes sweeping for threat, readiness and vigilance fuse into perfect execution. Kate's heartbeat accelerates. Her fingers tremble near the table as she studies the guard. Instinct had intervened faster than centuries of protocol. Her mind races. Was a mislaid threat, a targeted act, or unseen danger? The hall seemed suspended between normalcy and peril. Around them, subtle details emerge. Candlelight flickers across gilded frames. A silver candelabra tilts slightly. Servant exchange glances that speak volumes in silence. The camera pans the hall. A sleeve brushes the edge of a table. A foot shifts. Reflections in polished floors reveal anxious faces. Kate's eyes follow the shards of crystal. Each fragment a reminder how thin the line is between order and disaster. The guard steps closer, measured and deliberate. Presence neither threatening nor proud, only asserting vigilance. His gaze sweeps the room, silent and calculating. Whose duty outweighs the other? The crown's absolute protection or personal instinct to save? The hall is now a delicate balance of fear, protocol, and trust. Every motion is amplified. Every glance carries weight. A whisper, barely audible, reaches Kate's ears. Was it deliberate or just fortune? The question hangs, unanswered. The room seems to stretch, each heartbeat, each reflection, each step magnified. Kate's mind traces historical palace incidents, echoes of lessons learned, warnings whispered. Vigilance is never optional. Every detail of the guard's reflex, the angle, the timing, the precision, is now understood as the culmination of decades of training and moral calculation. The camera drifts over the shards glinting in the chandelier's fractured light. Kate leans closer, eyes narrowing. A faint shimmer at the edge of the table, subtle, almost invisible, catches her attention. Suspicion coils. What has gone unnoticed? What lies beneath the hall's polished perfection? Whispers ripple through corridors beyond the hall. Staff exchange careful words, wary of panic. Yet every glance conveys alarm. The palace itself seems a pulse, aware of the disruption, sensitive to every breach of protocol. Time stretches and contracts. Each heartbeat, each reflection, each motion is a note in the symphony of tension. Kate traces the fragments of crystal, each a reminder of the fragility of life, of near catastrophe, of the invisible hand of duty. Vigilance, heritage, moral responsibility, all converge in a single, fleeting act. The room holds its breath, eyes lock, minds calculate. Trust is tested in an instant. The palace's codes, centuries old, invisible, unyielding, assert themselves quietly but unmistakably. Every movement, every look, every pause is measured against them, and in the lingering silence, the faint shimmer at the table's edge hints at more, an anomaly that refuses to be ignored. Kate's gaze sharpens. The guard remains unyielding. The palace waits, patient and immense, its secrets hidden beneath layers of gilded grandeur. The shimmer at the edge of the table lingered in Kate's mind, persistent and unnerving. Hours after the shattered crystal, the hall had returned to a semblance of order, yet every footstep, every whisper, every subtle gesture felt charged with unspoken alarm. The palace was alive with a soft hum of scrutiny, aides moving with purpose, servants lingering on edges of corridors, eyes flicking toward every polished surface. Nothing escaped attention. Nothing could. Investigators arrived, silent, deliberate. Their movements were precise, rehearsed. Notebooks open, pens poised, cameras flashing faint light against walls lined with gilded portraits. Every moment leading to the glass incident was retraced, reconstructed with forensic patience. The favored crystal, its cut, its weight, its provenance, became a central focus. The servants who had handled it were questioned in hushed tones, their hands trembling as they recounted exact sequences. Who carried the tray? How it was presented? How Kate's hand had approached it? Nothing was trivial. Every detail mattered. The guard's actions were scrutinized with equal intensity. His instant reaction, that singular act of smashing the glass, was examined frame by frame in security footage. Analysts measured timing, stance, angle, and distance, parsing milliseconds as if the difference between instinct and negligence could be drawn in decimals. Was this standard procedure? Had he followed protocol? Or had he acted beyond the letter of the rules, trusting instinct over hierarchy? Questions echoed in corridors lined with marble. The balance between duty and initiative, the weight of action in the shadow of centuries-old codes. Historical incidents were recalled, subtle and unsettling. Tales of poison meals narrowly avoided, of palace intrigues revealed through careful observation, of past missteps where vigilance had faltered. The palace, steeped in tradition, demanded that history inform the present. Each recollection added gravity, emphasizing the invisible scaffolding upon which lives and reputation rested. Protocol was more than habit. It was survival. Kate walked the hall, tracing the path she had taken that morning. The echo of her shoes against marble felt amplified, each step a heartbeat in cathedral of stone. Servants and aides moved around her, their whispers soft but precise, their movements rehearsed yet tense. She noted the placement of each chair, the alignment of each table, the precise angle at which silverware had been arranged. Every element of the environment was a potential vector for threat. Every detail a measure of trust or potential betrayal. The investigators found the guard's report thorough, yet a subtle discrepancy caught their attention. A notation, almost imperceptible, regarding the placement of the servant by the east entrance, a minor deviation from standard protocol. Alone, it would have been inconsequential. In context, it hinted at an unseen variable. Paranoia began to thread through the palace like smoke. Kate observed the exchange between aides, noting the furrowed brows, the tight jaws, the silent questioning in eyes that spoke volumes without sound. Security measures were reviewed layer by layer. Surveillance records, access permissions, movement logs, and communication protocols were reconstructed with methodical care. Each lock, each threshold, each corridor had a history of potential compromise. The palace was a living organism of vigilance, Yet even the most intricate systems could be exploited by subtlety, by timing, by human fallibility. Kate felt the tension coiling within her, a tightrope between fear and trust, between instinct and institutional obligation. Conversations were deliberate, voices measured. Investigators discussed the psychology of threat, how perception informs reaction, how training can override hesitation, how protocol serves as both shield and guide. They analyzed the guard's posture, his microexpressions, the precision of his reflex. Every act was cross-referenced with manuals, with precedent, with unwritten codes of the palace. Here, instinct was legal, duty codified, morality entwined with procedure. As the day progressed, Kate revisited the dining hall, observing what had once been routine as if it were an unfamiliar terrain. The placement of her chair, the way light fell through stained glass, the subtle shimmer along the edge of the table, all became clues. Investigators lingered near the chandelier, measuring its suspension, considering potential for tampering. The palace itself seemed to tighten around them, corridors narrowing in perception, ceilings looming with silent accusation. Every member of the household felt the shift. The servants, once invisible shadows, now carried an added weight in every movement. Each gesture, each whisper, was assessed for compliance and loyalty. Kate herself became hyper-aware, scanning faces for telltale signs. Hesitation, distraction, curiosity misplaced. Each interaction was a potential breach or reassurance. Trust became a calculus of observation. An aide discovered an anomaly in the guard's report, a minor misalignment of foot traffic near the service corridor. On its own, it was trivial. Paired with the shimmer Kate had noticed, it suggested something broader, something unseen. Investigators widened their focus, tracing the edges of the hall, examining corners, noting where light and shadow played against the walls. The palace became a network of potential vulnerability, every reflection a potential witness, every shadow a possible vector for disruption. Kate felt the weight of history in the room. Centuries of protocol, discipline, and vigilance converged in the present moment. She reflected on the moral weight of decision-making. The guard had acted with immediate clarity, yet every instant of hesitation, every microsecond of doubt, could have been fatal. The palace demanded perfection, yet human instinct operated in fractions of a second. The tension between these forces created a palpable anxiety, threading through the air like static electricity. Minutes stretched to hours as reconstruction continued. Servants repeated actions. Investigators documented every nuance. Kate observed, silent and contemplative. The shimmer at the table remained in her mind, a subtle signal of potential intrusion. Questions arose. Who had prepared the glass? Who had served it? Who had walked these halls unseen? Each answer generated more queries, spiraling the investigation into layers of vigilance and suspicion. As evening approached, the palace's corridors seemed to close in, shadows lengthening with the fading light. Kate paused at the edge of the hall, noting the positions of guards, the alignment of tables, the exact trajectory of her earlier steps. The minor breach in protocol persisted in her thoughts, an irritant of uncertainty amid the polished certainty of palace life. The guard stood nearby, calm and observant, yet the scrutiny had shifted onto the institution itself. Procedures, once invisible and assumed, were now examined under the harsh light of suspicion. Kate realized that the danger was not only in the immediate moment. The threat was systemic, embedded in every corner, every decision, every assumption. The palace demanded not just loyalty, but hyper-awareness, constant vigilance, and moral courage. By nightfall, conclusions remained tentative. The shard of anomaly persisted. Investigators noted the discrepancy, discussed potential motives, and traced procedural gaps, but the true source of risk remained elusive. Kate understood that safety was provisional, trust conditional, and every familiar object, every gleaming crystal, every polished surface, a potential indicator of unseen peril. The chapter closes on Kate returning to the dining hall one final time. Her eyes sweep the hall, pausing on the faint shimmer along the edge of the table. The palace seems to breathe around her, corridors echoing the subtle tension of vigilance, the moral weight of protocol, the fragile balance between order and danger. In this cathedral of tradition and duty, one misstep could unravel everything. The shimmer at the edge of the dining table lingered in Kate's mind, like a faint pulse of unease she could not ignore. By morning, the palace had regained its surface calm. Yet every corridor, every hall, seemed alive with tension. Servants moved with careful steps. Guards lingered near corners, eyes scanning for anomalies. The minor breach found in the guard's report had set a thread of paranoia that stretched through every stone of the palace, binding observation and suspicion together. Kate approached the guard privately, the weight of unspoken questions pressing against her chest. She needed clarity. The polished corridor echoed under her shoes, each footstep a drumbeat of expectation. Around them, shadows lengthened as morning light filtered to the high windows, stretching across tapestries that depicted centuries of royal vigilance. She stopped, observing him with a measured intensity. His posture was impeccable, a testament to training, discipline, and instinct honed over years. "Why did you strike the glass?" Kate asked, voice low, controlled, yet taut with urgency. Her eyes searched his face for any trace of motive beyond duty. The guard's expression remained unreadable, composed, yet deliberate in every movement. His eyes flickered, scanning her, assessing her, balancing honesty with discretion. The liquid was compromised, he said finally, each word precise, weighed against centuries of protocol. I had no time to question it. Immediate action was necessary. Kate's gaze narrowed. Compromised? By whom? The guard hesitated, not in indecision, but in principle. Some knowledge was not hers alone to wield. Loyalty demanded measured disclosure. I cannot say, he replied, his voice quiet yet firm. But the threat was real. You were at risk. A silence fell, heavy and deliberate. It stretched between them like a taut rope. Outside, the palace moved in muted rhythm, unaware of the tension contained within that single corridor. The weight of unspoken truths pressed down, threading the air with moral and institutional gravity. Kate considered the implications. The danger was not random. Someone somewhere had acted within these walls, attempting subtle subversion, a betrayal hidden beneath layers of protocol. Whispers began to circulate elsewhere. Servants exchanged cautious glances. Aides moved with deliberate discretion. The palace itself seemed to respond to the tension, as though it were a living entity sensing disruption. Corridors, once familiar, felt unfamiliar. Shadows cast by chandeliers lengthened, reflecting the unease that had settled in every stone, every polished surface, every echoing archway. Kate's mind raced. She replayed the morning's events. The sip of crystal, the shards scattered across the table, the guard's immediate, precise intervention. Nothing about it had been ordinary. And now, confronted with the possibility of insider interference, the palace, her home, her responsibility, felt fragile, brittle under the weight of secrecy. I need full transparency, Kate said, her voice low, almost a whisper, yet it carried the authority of command. No detail is too small. No gesture too insignificant. I need to understand what happened. And why? The guard nodded, a single measured motion. His gaze shifted toward the dining hall, toward the shards that still glittered faintly in memory, then returned to her. The palace operates on layers of vigilance, he said. Some threats are visible. Others hide in plain sight. Protocol guides our response, but instinct protects lives. Today, instinct and duty coincided. You survived because the system worked, and because it did not fail in the moment it mattered most. Kate absorbed the weight of his words. Duty and personal instinct, protocol and morality, all had collided in an instant. The palace's history of discipline had preserved her life. Yet she felt the chilling recognition that even flawless procedure could not guarantee safety. Questions of trust and loyalty surged. Who could be relied upon? Who might conceal intent beneath a veneer of obedience? They moved silently down a corridor, the sound of their steps measured against a cathedral-like echo of polished stone. Outside, the soft murmur of palace life continued. Servants arranging chairs, the faint clink of silverware, distant conversations in hushed tones. But inside, the moral and emotional tension pressed close, intimate, unavoidable. A subtle discovery added urgency. A folded note, tucked discreetly beneath a tapestry in an adjacent chamber. Kate's eyes widened as she retrieved it, careful to avoid disturbing its delicate placement. The handwriting was deliberate, familiar in style yet opaque in intent. Its contents hinted at orchestrated subversion, a deliberate manipulation of events designed to test loyalty and vigilance. The note confirmed her fears. The danger had not been random. A high-ranking insider had acted with subtlety, placing lives and tradition at risk in a carefully calculated maneuver. The guard's gaze followed hers, steady, unflinching. "This confirms what I suspected," he said quietly. "There are those within these walls whose allegiance is conditional. Our duty is to discern action from appearance, to uphold protocol even when morality is tested." Kate's hands tightened around the note. The palace, in its glittering grandeur, seemed suddenly smaller, more intimate, as though the walls themselves pressed in with questions. Who? Why? What next? The moral calculus of action weighed heavily upon her. Every decision, every gesture, every measure of vigilance carried consequences far beyond the immediate moment. A silence fell again, pregnant with understanding. The confrontation had achieved clarity, yet it also revealed layers of complexity. The interplay between institutional loyalty and personal judgment, between visible threats and hidden agendas. Kate understood now that trust was conditional, that vigilance required both discipline and moral courage, and that even those sworn to protect could be forced to act in isolation when instinct collided with procedure. The camera drifts along the empty corridors as Kate and the guard return to the central hall. Chandeliers shimmer above, their fractured light casting long, uncertain shadows. Servants and aides continue their duties, unaware of the moral and investigative tension unfolding just beyond perception. Every glance exchanged, every whispered movement, now carries new significance. The chapter's emotional pivot arrives as Kate reflects on her reliance upon both the institution and the individual. The guard's instantaneous decision had saved her life, yet revealed the fragility of assumed trust. She recognizes a paradox. Protection demands adherence to protocol, yet sometimes instinct must override regulation. The weight of centuries of tradition, combined with the immediacy of personal responsibility, presses upon her with tangible gravity. The final moments of the chapter focus on a concealed envelope discovered in the adjacent chamber. Its presence is subtle yet unmistakable. A physical manifestation betrayal, a tangible symbol of unseen agendas at work. Kate's gaze lingers, a mixture of determination and apprehension, understanding that the next steps will demand both strategic thinking and moral clarity. The corridors of the palace had grown colder, longer, more menacing the hours since the envelope's discovery. Shadows stretched along the walls, tracing the elaborate tapestries that chronicled centuries of loyalty, ceremony, and vigilance. Kate moved carefully, her steps deliberate, every sense alert to detail. The soft rustle of servant's robe, the faint tap of boots on marble, the whisper of distant conversations filtered through ornate doors. The palace itself seemed aware, its stones heavy with secrets, its chandeliers suspended like watchful eyes. The envelope, concealed yet deliberate, revealed only fragments at first. Documents, folded with precision, outlined a network of covert threats, subtle manipulations of palace operations, unexplained shifts in guard rotations, discrepancies in access logs, and minor breaches masked by appearances. The handwriting was familiar, yet intentionally cryptic. As Kate unfolded the papers, the weight of betrayal pressed down upon her. The guard's earlier vigilance had been justified. Danger was embedded not just in physical objects, but in human intent. Every revelation rippled through the palace's invisible lattice. Servants, aides, and minor officials became figures in a delicate drama of suspicion. Who could be trusted? Which gestures were genuine, and which were calculated performances? The palace, with its vast halls and glittering surfaces, became a labyrinth of observation, where every detail, a tilt of the head, the placement of a hand, the trajectory of a glance, carried meaning. Kate and the guard moved through this web of potential treachery with quiet deliberation. Their conversations were sparse, measured, each word weighed against centuries of duty and the moral imperative to act without disrupting the delicate balance of palace life. "The threat is systemic," the guard said, his tone low, almost a whisper. "It is woven into the daily routines, disguised in compliance. The challenge is not to discover it. It is to navigate it without collapse." Kate absorbed this silently, letting her gaze trace the corridors and chambers where every shadow seemed to breathe. The palace was alive with the residue of history, a living archive of loyalty and treachery. Every chandelier's shimmer, every polished floor, every gilded frame became a potential witness, a subtle clue in a network of secrets. The document confirmed what she had feared. Betrayal could emerge in the most trusted sources, and vigilance alone was insufficient without moral discernment. Hours passed as they cross-referenced the contents of the envelope with security logs, daily routines, and past incidents. Minor inconsistencies became patterns. Small deviations in guard rotations, unaccounted for absences of staff, subtle adjustments to ceremonial procedures, all pointed to a deliberate orchestration. The palace's very architecture, its labyrinthine corridors, hidden alcoves, and private chambers, had been studied and exploited. Kate realized that this was not merely an isolated act. It was a careful probing of vulnerabilities, a test of the institution itself. Even the palace's visual grandeur took on new significance. Chandeliers became more than decoration. They were vantage points, potential hiding places for evidence, reflections of observation. Tapestries depicted scenes of loyalty and service, but now they seemed almost ironic. Historical testaments to vigilance that could be undermined by the present. Every artifact, every object, became a symbol of both fragility and resilience. Kate's reflections deepened as the weight of moral responsibility settled upon her. The palace demanded discretion and patience. The wrong reaction could trigger panic or suspicion, undermining the very protocols designed to protect life and tradition. She understood that uncovering the network of threats required both strategic intelligence and emotional control. Every interaction, every observation, every decision had consequences far beyond the immediate moment. In one dimly lit chamber, Kate paused over a set of ledgers, tracing entries with careful fingers. Some names recurred with unusual frequency. Some tasks were logged inconsistently. Patterns emerged like shadows, shifting across a marble floor. The guard watched silently, eyes scanning the room, every micro-expression recorded and analyzed. They were two figures moving in synchronized caution, balancing urgency against the necessity of invisibility. Late into the evening, the palace itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. The subtle movements of staff, the distant clatter of silver, even the way light fell through windows suggested that secrets were shifting, rearranging themselves within the vast organism of the palace. Kate recognized that the discovery of these documents had changed everything. The guard's earlier act of vigilance was no longer an isolated moment of heroism. It was part of a broader narrative, a warning of dangers hidden in plain sight. By nightfall, Kate convened a quiet consultation with the few allies she trusted implicitly. They reviewed the documents again, noting patterns and discrepancies, cross-referencing every minor detail with their knowledge of the palace and its inhabitants. Conversations were low and deliberate, each word chosen with precision, each observation cataloged for strategic action. The sense of urgency was tempered by the awareness that any misstep could compromise both investigation and safety. The palace corridors, once familiar, had become a landscape of moral and institutional ambiguity. Every door, every archway, every shadowed alcove demanded careful interpretation. Kate realized that vigilance alone could not ensure safety. Insight, intuition, and courage were equally necessary. The network of threats was subtle, pervasive, and patient, waiting for mistakes, hesitation, or misjudgment. As the chapter drew to a close, Kate returned to the dining hall where the incident had begun. The crystal shards were gone, but the memory remained vivid, a symbol of near catastrophe and the price of vigilance. She placed the envelope carefully on the table, its presence a reminder that betrayal could take many forms. Hidden in documents, masked in compliance, or whispered through corridors unseen. The palace, gleaming and silent, seemed to lean closer, its secrets pressing forward, demanding attention, demanding action. The palace awoke slowly, its corridors still heavy with the residue of secrecy and vigilance. Shadows receded with the dawn, but the tension of recent days lingered in polished floors, high arches, and the soft glimmer of chandeliers. Kate walked deliberately through the hallways, each step measured, each gaze absorbing the quiet order, restored yet tempered by the memory of betrayal. The shards of crystal that had signaled danger were gone, yet their echo remained in the minds of those who had witnessed the near catastrophe. The guard moved beside her, steady, precise, a sentinel whose presence had become emblematic of unwavering duty. His earlier actions, instantaneous, decisive, morally weighted, had been vindicated, and yet he remained as composed as ever, as if the events themselves were simply part of the palace's eternal rhythm. Their shared understanding required no words. The vigilance that had preserved life now served as a foundation for restoring trust. Kate convened with her closest aides in a chamber lined with tapestries, chronicling centuries of palace history. Every detail mattered. The alignment of desks, the methodical arrangement of documents, the subtle placement of chairs allowing unobstructed oversight. The investigation had concluded. The anomalies traced and contained. The culprit behind the disruptions, a high-ranking official whose loyalty had been conditional, was confronted privately with dignity and firmness. Justice was administered not in spectacle, but in measured action. The palace itself seemed to exhale, its walls absorbing the resolution, the rituals of order reasserting themselves. Conversations between Kate and the guard were quiet, reflective, yet weighted with unspoken acknowledgement. Protocols restored, Kate said, her voice deliberate calm. Yet the fragility of trust remains. We must never forget that vigilance requires constant renewal. The guard's reply was simple, precise. Duty is not measured by calm days, but by the moments when lives hang in balance. Today, we honor that duty. The palace resumed its rhythm, ceremonial yet subdued. Servants moved efficiently. Aides followed the restored protocols. And the corridors echoed with the measured sounds of order. Every gesture, the placement of silverware, the alignment of chairs, the methodical movements of guards, reflected both the restoration of function and the reinforcement of moral and institutional authority. Kate observed, noting the subtle cues, the quiet pride in the guard's stance, the alert calm in the aide's eyes, the meticulous attention to procedure. Reflection permeated every action. Kate considered the lessons learned. The necessity of trust tempered with scrutiny, the fragility of assumptions, the moral weight of immediate action balanced against institutional preservation. The palace had endured, not because of a single individual, but because layers of vigilance, both human and procedural, had intersected with courage and integrity. The guard's intervention had been a catalyst, a tangible reminder of the harmony between instinct and duty. Visual cues reinforced the narrative of restoration. Chandeliers glimmered, the light diffused evenly across polished floors. Tapestries depicted scenes of loyalty, sacrifice, and vigilance, now mirrored in the measured movements of the household. Every artifact, every reflection, every line of architecture became a silent testament to the balance restored. Kate's presence, deliberate and observant, ensured that the palace's history of discipline continued unbroken. The culprit, confronted, accepted the quiet authority of justice. There was no spectacle, no harsh rebuke, only measured correction and moral accountability. Trust, once compromised, was repaired carefully, the emphasis on clarity, responsibility, and institutional continuity. The palace's moral fabric, though stretched, remained intact, strengthened by the trials it had endured. As the day progressed, Kate paused at the dining hall where the incident had first occurred. The shards of crystal were gone, but the memory remained vivid. She traced the outline of the table, observing the alignment of settings, the reflection of light across polished surfaces. Every detail mattered. A reminder of vigilance, a testament to endurance, and meditation on the fragile balance between danger and safety, trust and skepticism. The guard stood nearby, silent yet resolute. His presence, once an immediate shield against harm, now embodied the continuing responsibility of oversight. The moral weight of his actions, once urgent and reactive, now settled into enduring reassurance. Order had returned, yet was not complacent. The palace remained alert, aware that vigilance required both action and reflection. Kate reflected on the interplay between personal courage and institutional duty. The events had tested her understanding of loyalty, challenged her reliance on protocol, and illuminated the delicate equilibrium of palace life. Restoration was not merely the return of order, but the reaffirmation of moral and procedural integrity. The palace, in its grandeur and permanence, had endured, its vigilance renewed, its traditions preserved, its authority reinforced. The chapter closes with a moment of quiet dignity. Kate walks along a corridor, her gaze sweeping the restored hallways. The guards and aides moved with measured precision, each aware of the recent trials yet confident in the return to stability. Light glimmers across polished marble, reflecting both the palace's grandeur and resilience of those who serve within it. The palace awoke to a quiet morning, the kind where light spills in gold across polished floors, and every surface seems to hold its breath. The events of recent days linger like the faint echo of a distant bell, sharp, insistent, yet softened by time. Kate moved slowly through corridors, pausing to observe the still shimmer of chandeliers and the gentle alignment of polished silver. Every detail reflected a history of vigilance, a legacy of duty, and the quiet resilience of a place designed to endure. The guard walked beside her, measured and deliberate, the embodiment of unwavering discipline. His presence no longer carried the sharp tension of crisis. It had transformed into a symbol of continued guardianship, an anchor in a palace that had learned once again the fragility of trust. Kate's thoughts traced the events of the past days, the shattered crystal, the envelope, the subtle betrayals, and the restoration of order. Each moment was a lesson in vigilance, each decision a meditation on morality. Kate paused before the grand dining hall, its surfaces gleaming in the calm morning light. The memory of the shards, of the instant danger averted, lingered as a silent testament to both instinct and protocol. The hall, once charged with tension, now radiated serenity, yet beneath the surface lay the permanent knowledge that vigilance was a responsibility, not a convenience. Every reflection in the polished floors, every glint of crystal, served as a reminder of lessons learned, that safety is provisional, trust conditional, and courage essential. The palace seemed to breathe around her. Corridors echoed with soft footfalls. Tapestries whispered stories of loyalty and sacrifice. Chandeliers cast delicate prisms of light across every surface. Kate's gaze lingered on each detail, noting the interplay of light and shadow, the subtle ways in which history, architecture, and ritual converged to reinforce the moral fabric of the institution. The palace was not merely stone and glass. It was an active participant in the preservation of values, a witness to every choice, every act of courage. Conversations with the guard unfolded in quiet reflection. "The palace endures," Kate said, voice low, contemplative. "Not because it is impervious, but because vigilance, loyalty, and integrity are upheld within its walls." He nodded, his expression calm but attentive. "Every moment of crisis tests us," he replied. "Every choice strengthens the system, or exposes its weakness. Today, it has been strengthened, but the responsibility never ends." Kate walked past familiar corridors, each step measured, absorbing the permanence and fragility coexisting in the palace. She thought of those whose loyalty had been tested, those whose vigilance had averted catastrophe, and those whose actions, intentional or not, had left ripples through the household. The moral clarity of duty, the imperatives of protocol, and the personal courage required to act decisively all blended into a serene, almost meditative understanding. She lingered in a small private chamber, light falling gently across polished crystal, her reflection fractured yet complete. In it, she saw the guard's steadfast presence mirrored in the shadows, the palace's enduring grandeur, and her own contemplation of responsibility and consequence. The interplay of light, reflection, and history created a canvas where past, present, and potential future converged. Each reflection became a meditation on vigilance, on the necessity of awareness, patience, and moral courage. As she moved through the palace, she noted the restored rhythm of life. Servants aligning silverware with precision, aides moving with deliberate efficiency, guards standing in quiet observation. Every act, however mundane, was now a reaffirmation of the lessons learned. Trust must be earned and maintained, vigilance must be constant, and courage must operate in harmony with moral principle. The palace, once again orderly, radiated calm, but beneath the surface, the lessons of near catastrophe lingered. Kate paused by the window, overlooking the gardens. Morning mist softened the view, and the sunlight fractured into delicate prisms across the stone walkways. She reflected on the delicate balance of power, duty, and heritage. The palace was a mirror of human virtue and vulnerability, a reminder that history is preserved not in isolation, but through continuous vigilance, integrity, and courage. The guard's presence remained a silent reassurance. His actions had saved lives, upheld protocol, and demonstrated the moral weight inherent in disciplined instinct. Kate understood that protection was a collaboration between institutional structure and human judgment, and that each act of vigilance reinforced the palace's enduring legacy. The past, present, and potential threats coexisted in quiet harmony, observed in every reflection, every glint of crystal, every polished surface. In the final moments of reflection, Kate allowed herself a quiet acknowledgement of resilience. Hers, the guards, and the palace's. The trials had tested loyalty, discretion, and moral clarity, yet the institution had endured. The lessons were clear. Vigilance is eternal. Trust is conditional. Courage is essential, and the palace itself is a living witness to these truths.